What's up, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Best Bets for UFC London. Lerone Murphy versus Muvsar Evloev, where I'll be discussing the most confident picks, the lock of the week, the underdog of the week, and some parlays that I like. Starting off with the most confident picks, we got Mario Pinto, Montas Crow, and Ivo Baraneski. They're all massive favorites, but I do think they all win their fights. Felipe Franco versus Mario Pinto. Pinto is the clear side here. He's undefeated, proven at the UFC level, has a big size advantage, and he's on a knockout streak with no real cardio concerns. Felipe Franco, his opponent, he might look well-rounded on paper, but he hasn't beaten anyone notable. And the one time he stepped up in competition, he lost that fight. And in this fight, it should mostly play out on the feet, where Pinto's technical striking, his patience, his distance management give him a big advantage here. So Franco's best chance is to make it a brawl, but Pinto's more composed and the more skilled fighter. So give me Mario Pinto. He's more proven. He should be more technical in this matchup and should outclass him everywhere the fight goes. Moving on to Montas Crow. He's fighting Antonio Tricoli. I just can't trust Tricoli here. He's 0-3 in the UFC, doesn't use his size well, and he's way too hittable. And his only real path here is to catch a submission, but overall, he just hasn't looked UFC level. And Montas is making his debut, but he looks promising, right? He's on a finishing streak, explosive, he's a technical striker, and he's coming off of a strong Contender Series win. If this fight stays on the feet, Montas should land the cleaner, more powerful shots, and even if Tricoli tries to wrestle, he'll have to eat shots to close the distance. So give me Montas. He should be the more skilled, more dangerous fighter, and he just should be better everywhere the fight goes. Moving on to Ivo Baraneski fighting Austin Lane. This matchup heavily favors Ivo Baraneski. Lane is extremely chinny, and he has been finished in most of his losses, while Ivo is powerful, aggressive, and always looking for the knockout. Ivo showed in his last fight, he is willing to brawl, but he can also be composed and pick his shots when needed. Either way, that power is a big problem for Lane. Lane's only real path is to wrestle, and Ivo has a strong grappling base and should be able to keep this fight standing. So give me Ivo to find the shot and get the knockout victory here. Moving on to lock of the week, Michael Venom Page. Guys, MVP, he's a generational talent. He was minus 180 odds against Jared Cannonier in his last fight, and we saw what he did to Jared, and I feel like people are still sketched out about MVP because of his age. I feel like it has a lot to do with his age, but he still moves like he's in the Matrix. He's in the Matrix. I seriously don't think Sam Patterson is anywhere near his level. MVP is just on another level of striking. Even at 38 years old, he still looks elite. He's controlling distance, landing clean shots, and making high-level fighters look uncomfortable. Patterson, he is dangerous, and he's on a 4-fight first-round finishing streak, but he hasn't faced someone close to MVP's level. On the feet, MVP should be faster, more accurate, and more harder to deal with. He's a tricky puzzle to figure out. Patterson's best path is probably to wrestle, but it'll be hard to set up those takedowns against MVP's movement, while Patterson, he'll likely eat too many shots trying to close that distance. So give me MVP to have the cleaner striking, better control, and just win the rounds overall. So moving on to underdog of the week, Nathaniel Wood. Don't sleep on Nathaniel Wood, man. This is a banger matchup, but Nathaniel Wood is extremely experienced in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight win streak right now, and his last performance, it showed a lot. He got dropped early, stayed composed, and came back to outstrike Delgado with clean technical boxing. Now he's facing Luzin Kietna, or however you say his name, and that guy, he's dangerous. He's fast, he's explosive, he brings pressure, and has solid takedown defense as well. But he hasn't been tested at the UFC level yet. And this is by far the toughest opponent he's ever faced. And Wood, he's dealt with pressure and adversity before. He might have a tough first round, but once he finds his rhythm and gets his timing down and he settles into the fight, his composure should take over this matchup. So give me Nathaniel Wood to use his experience and technical striking to win a good fight. So moving on to the parlay breakdowns. We got, starting off with the safety lock, we got MVP and Mario Pinto at minus 135 for the safety lock. I feel this is a strong safety play. MVP has a massive striking advantage and should control the fight on the feet, while Mario Pinto, is the more proven fighter with big size and skill edge over a short notice debut opponent. You know, they both have clear paths to win here without needing anything chaotic. They should just outright win their matchups. Moving on to the ultimate lock at -125, slightly better odds, pairing MVP up with Iwo Baraneski. MVP, he should dominate the striking. And Iwo has a perfect matchup against a very chinny opponent in Austin Lane. You know, if that fight stays on the feet, Iwo's power is a huge problem. So both fighters, they have clear finishing upside and stylistic advantages in this matchup. Moving on to the affordable juice section, +160. This one gives you some serious value with Al-Sawadi and Curtis Campbell. I believe his first name is Al-Sawadi. He's a live slight favorite who can really test Shamrock. And Shamrock is someone who I have not been impressed with at all, you know, and pairing El-Sawadi up with Campbell, you know, Campbell has the tools to compete in a high-paced fight against Danny Silva, whether it's pressure against the fence or just landing the cleaner shots. You're getting big plus money backing two fighters who have real chances to win here. So moving on to the four most confident picks, we got MVP, Pinto, Montas, and Iwo at +120. Not the greatest value for four fighters for a four-leg, but it's a clean four-leg parlay with fighters who have clear advantages. You know, MVP and Pinto should control the fights using their skill and experience. Montas is facing someone who hasn't shown to be UFC level at all, and Iwo has the power edge in a favorable matchup for him. So all four have strong paths to victory here at +120 for the four most confident picks. I do see it coming through. Moving on to a fun duo parlay, +220. This is some serious value for two fighters that I strongly believe will win. Carolina is the better striker in her matchup versus Melissa Mullins. She should be able to keep the fight on the feet using nasty elbows and knees in the clinch, and Mullins won't close the distance without taking some punishment. While pairing her up with Mason Jones, who is well-rounded and experienced enough to handle his opponent, Axel Sosa, I see Jones drowning him with the cardio and pressure. Both fighters here, Carolina and Jones, can win their matchups with their skill sets, making this a solid value play, right? Moving on to Underdog City, Nathaniel Wood and Lerone Murphy +625. This is a massive value play. This is the big upside play, right? Nathaniel Wood has the experience and composure to outclass Kieta over time, and Lerone Murphy is a dangerous elite level striker and can absolutely compete with Evloev and win based off of damage and having the hometown advantage on his side as well. If both show up at their best, this parlay cash is huge. So that does conclude this week's best bets for Murphy versus Evloev, the fight card. So hope you found this helpful. Till next time.